Welcome to the Wisconsin Music Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Wisconsin Music Podcast. This week we have Bryan Cherry. His bio reads as Bryan Cherry is a rock and soul musician from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In 2021, he was named Best R&B Soul Artist in Wisconsin at the Wisconsin Area Music Industry Awards. Cherry's songs cross the expanse between soul, americana, and rock music with ease. His music has been played on 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, FM 102.1, and WXRT in Chicago. He has blazed trails all around the Midwest with his brand of passionate and unique songwriting. He is also a poet. So let's get right into the conversation with Bryan. Welcome to the Wisconsin Music Podcast. This week we have Bryan Cherry. I guess you would call yourself like a kind of like a soul singer, right?
Right.
Yeah. So he's going to talk about a couple albums that came out in the year of 2022. We're recording this the first week of January. This is probably going to come out in March, mid-March probably. So welcome to the Wisconsin Music Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Introduce yourself to the listeners and kind of give us like your music origin story. How did music kind of start in your life and, kind of how you grew up with it?
So I'm Bryan Cherry, cherry just like the fruit. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin originally, born and raised, short stint in Waukesha. Studied some politics and stuff for a little bit, so I was doing that, but back in Milwaukee now. How I got started in music was actually in Waukesha. One of my roommates played some guitar, and he played Blackbird by the Beatles, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you have to tell me how to do that right now,
Cool.
Off to the races after that.
Awesome. Now, when you were, growing up with your family, when you were younger, was there a lot of music being played in the house, or was this something that came later on in your life?
Yeah, my family is pretty big into music. My mom is she would be playing Whitney Houston or Luther Vandross or Otis Redding all day. And Prince was her favorite, So, and then my dad was like a big time Funkadelic, Parliament Funkadelic fan. So I got that angle from him. He was into Led Zeppelin and stuff too. So just kind of always there was music playing in the house. And it's weird because I'm the actual only musician that came out of my household. I'm the oldest of 8 children. But music was there all the time. My parents didn't play, but they just loved it. So.
Excellent. Now, we talked a little bit about in the intro that you have 2 albums that came out in 2022. Have you performed out live with some of this music yet, or has that not happened?
No, it has, yeah. The second one that came out, which is called The Power, we came out in August of 2022, and I was actually on tour out east, on the East Coast, and through the Mid-South, kind of playing these tunes and checking them out in front of people for the first time. So, yeah, they've been playing out a bunch.
And with playing it out, why don't you tell us a little bit about the tour that you were on, and kind of, if you can, give us like a comparison between the live music scene where you were out on tour compared to in Milwaukee and Waukesha.
Yeah, it was different everywhere. We went a lot of places. We went from Milwaukee to Detroit, had a show, then had a show in Pittsburgh, a show in Philadelphia, show in Richmond, Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina, over to Nashville, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, and then St. Louis, Quad Cities, and Chicago was the end of it, back to Milwaukee. It was different in every city. We got lucky and we found a lot of scenes where people are into music, and because they didn't know. I went with one other guy, Cody James he's from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. He's a singer-songwriter, and so they don't know us from the Hill of Beans or anything, but they came out to listen to music, which was pretty cool.
Did you find it as you're talking about people enjoy the music? Do you find that it was pretty similar between that and Milwaukee, or did you find some major differences?
Well, Milwaukee's kind of a hard city for a lot of reasons, and but it's good that it's hard to me because it's like it makes you strive to think about it differently. But in these other cities, some of them, it seemed like people just go out for music, like even original music that they've never heard before, which is a slightly different in Milwaukee's scene.
You had one album come out in August, but you also had a second one. When did that one come out?
That one came out in April Fool's Day on 2022. So that was called Trainwreck. That was produced and played on by a great singer-songwriter from Milwaukee. His name is Hayward Williams.
Okay.
So it's a funny story how it happened. We met each other probably 15 years ago at this point. He had a residency every week at this place in Waukesha when I was in college. And we'd always go down and check him out, And
okay.
Shoot, 15 years in the future, his daughter goes to the same school as my son in Milwaukee here randomly. And so we, talk walking up to school, dropping them off and stuff. And I was like, I really love the production work on your last two records. And I was like, who did that? He's like, oh, I did. If you ever need help, let me know. And
Excellent.
The next day, come up, and within a month, we had that record all done.
Why don't we walk the listeners through the recording process of that one? How did it get started? Where was it recorded? And, kind of give us, some details about what you learned in that process.
Yeah, so that one was interesting because it was the first one where I had the songs complete, but I sent them to Hayward and he rearranged them and just changed the songs around a little bit. And then we had it sent out actually to a keyboard player and a drummer who I still haven't met to this day, but they played some beautiful things on it,
Okay.
And so then we had that done, and I just came and sang over the whole thing. So it was all my lyrics, all my singing and stuff like that. And it was just a whole different thing that I've ever been involved in. It was easy. We didn't have to think twice about a lot of things. We just felt like we were feeling the same things at the same time, which was really cool. And it taught me that, because the record that came out before that came out right before the pandemic in 2019.
Okay.
And that took 8 months to record from start to finish. So to be able to do something in just the 4 weeks was such an uplifting thing to say, and freeing to be able to say, well, maybe I don't need to always take that much time.
Yeah.
And it was really well for both of them, I think,
Okay.
All the songs have been on radio in the area. There's a couple that are playing on 88.9 Radio Milwaukee. WMSC is playing some of them. And then Rock 102.1 is playing them. So everybody's been really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And if I remember right, you also had it on WXRT in Chicago, right?
Yeah, not this one. One of the ones in the past was on XRT in Chicago, which is really a really cool thing. I love the station a lot.
This album that we're talking about, Trainwreck, you haven't even met a couple of the players on there. So to get this recorded, was it recorded in multiple locations?
Yes. The piano player, Brooks, he's from Boston. And the drummer, he's from Chicago. And they've worked really closely with Hayward in the past. So he worked with them to make it work with me, which was really nice. So all we did is we'd send them a song in an email. They play their parts, record their parts, and send it back. And we just add it all together,
And then your parts, were they recorded at a studio, or do you have a little home setup, or how was your parts done?
This was in Hayward's basement.
Okay.
It was awesome. He has a little studio down there, and it's great because you don't have to in a normal studio, you're always kind of looking at the clock to say how much is this costing me? How much is this costing me?
Yeah.
Even if you want to be like that, it's something that creeps up in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But there it was just no, you just do it until it makes sense, until it sounds good to yourself,
Is there a couple songs you'd like to talk about from that album that you'd like the listeners to listen to? We can put it on the podcast for you. Sure.
That'd be great. I'd say the title track of Trainwreck is a good one. It's a song that I had where when you hear the demo of the song, you'd be hard pressed to tell that it's even the same song. But he made it was play like a folky, old Americana track when I played it, And he into this driving, like the band type of thing, and the keys on it are just twinkling throughout, you know. It's really fun, and then the backbeat of the drums. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite songs off the record.
Well, I fell in love with the train wreck. I saw her coming, but I could not resist. Her beautiful disaster was going my way. Well, I tried to salvage my life in the junkyard of her eyes, and all I could find was scraps of pain. 'Cause I'm left with a lonely so cruel, left in the wreckage of loving you. It'd be mighty kind of you to make this right. And oh Lord, what am I gonna do? Been searching and ain't got no clue. Lord, it'd be mighty kind of you to let me die. Asked the gin for some advice, and all it can scream is make her come home. Damn it, Megan, come to me. Damn it, Megan, come to me. Wreck me again so I can be free. 'Cause I'm left with a lonely so cruel, left in the wreckage of love. Right. And oh Lord, what am I gonna do? Been searching and ain't got no clue. Lord, it be mighty kind of you to let me die. Damn it, Megan, come back to me. Damn it, Megan, come to me. Break me again so I can be free.
The second one that came out in August, was that recorded differently than Trainwreck, or was it recorded pretty similar?
Yeah, so that was differently. That one, so Trainwreck came out in April. We started recording The Power in May, and it was completely different. I worked with Sean Williamson, who's the longtime guitar player in my band, Bryan Cherry.
Okay.
We played together for about 15 years or so now. But yeah, we recorded at his house. He has a studio at his place, which is the same type of vibe where we don't have to worry about time. And plus, like, Sean and I know each other so well musically and just as people that we know when it's happening and when it's not happening. So we're able to get good takes almost right away all the time now, which is fun. A lot of that stuff is first take. The title track, The Power, all of it was first take for me. Like, he had the idea for the song, the chord progression and the riff, and I had heard it. And then when I got to the studio, I kind of just freestyled something that came off in my head, and it turned out to be the actual, verse for it.
the ancient grace where the horizon meets the sun, where the illusion is strong among the people. We will devour everything that ever will come until we gain the power. Until we come together, show ourselves as being one. Until we get the power, we collectively rise up and show them nobody can win. Until we
What would you say was the main drive to create this album?
I think so. The song "The Power," going back to that, is a song that describes a lot of like the powerlessness that a lot of people feel right now, really around the world. And like, it's just about like the refrain is like, until we gain the power, until we gain the power. And it's about working together and trying to, lift other people up when you can and seeing how that could change the world, So it was important to me to get that out.
Now, do you feel like when you were studying politics when you were younger, did that kind of influence this, or was it more of life experiences that brought that forward?
No, I've never thought about it like that, but it definitely influences it just in the fact that even to this day, like if I let myself be, I'm more hyper aware of what's going on in the political world and how it's affecting things. But yeah, I mean, because songs come from life, and that's part of my life. I worked for campaigns and stuff after that, and like it's in there somewhere. And sometimes it comes out like this. Sometimes,
Yeah, definitely. So, do you feel you're more of a political activist with your music, or is it just something that you like to write about but not really focus as your main thing?
No, I would say it's more of like a documentary style where it's like, I'm just really hyper focused on documenting my life, and I'm also I write poetry. So I'm a poet as well. So like, I'm just really trying to hone in on all the mundane things, all the happy things, all the sad things, all the weird things that happen, and try and get them in song. And so, yeah, when something comes up in the news that like tips me off like that, the song will come out about it, but it's not because I'm trying to be something or do something necessarily.
Gotcha. One of the next questions I ask is about work-life balance. Do you find that it's a struggle for you to be creative? If you, I don't know if you have a day job or not, but if you do, does that interfere with your creativity, or do you set aside some time for writing songs and it's a pretty good balance for you?
Yeah, I have quite the day job, actually. I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I have two children, 2 young children. And so, like, I'm with them all the time when they're not in school.
Yeah.
But in answer to that question, I do carve time out specifically. Either I'll wake up early and I'll also work when they go to school, because there's 3 hours in the morning where they're both at school. So
okay,
I'll just work during those time periods or whatever, or when they go to sleep, but mostly in the morning or when they're at school.
So you take advantage of that small window to make sure you accomplish something creative when you get the chance.
Exactly. I mean, my main motive is to try and write something every day, like a guitar piece. and a writing piece, like every day. Like try and think of like something that could be a song, or who knows, just record it, and even if it's just 30 seconds of it.
Yeah.
So like, then you have something that you can look at and say, oh yeah, I created something today. No matter what you think of it, those are just value judgments. It's really just an exercise to keep yourself motivated to do it,
Yeah, if you don't carve out that time, and plan for it, sometimes before you know it, the time escapes you, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have wasted that time, whatever I was doing, and got to be creative.
That's so true.
Yeah. So you've been doing that for a while, I bet now. So have you learned, or what have you learned that you could tell listeners that that's something that's kind of happened over the years of doing that's made you better at it?
It's been impactful. And so if you ever heard of the flow state, are you familiar with that?
I think so. It's been a while since I heard about it, but I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, just where kind of everything is working at a high level, and you're creating without thinking about it too much. I found it easier to get into that flow state by always doing the same things when I'm going to start playing guitar or writing and stuff like that, because it just reminds my brain that, okay, now it's time to, let go a little bit and see what comes, type of deal. And just the fact of doing something every day, no matter what it is, if you want to do it, if you try to do even just a little bit every day of it, it's super helpful. Exactly.
Have you been part of a gig or been at a concert where it has made an impression on you in some way? Like you watched a performer or something happened up on stage while you're performing and it was just something eye-opening for you?
It happens all the time. I mean, I know I said, Blackbird is the reason I started playing guitar.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney wrote Blackbird. And so I saw Paul McCartney at Summerfest. And I was 3 rows back, center stage, dead center. And when he played Blackbird, he lifted up on this circular riser and he just played it looking down at all of us. And it was just him by himself. Not a bad note in the world happening, and it was just found, I don't know, but it happens even when I'm performing too, though. It's like, sometimes you'll do something that you weren't intending to do. And maybe it was because of some limitation that you had, but something else happens and it shows like, oh, my voice also cracks here. How can I utilize that to, do something different? So yeah, it happens all the time.
Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I'll just show you these. You probably can't see them, but this is my poetry book, Funeral Journey. It came out in 2019. And then this is Ruins, Ruminations, and Rituals, which also came out in 2019. So I've been doing a lot of poetry as well. Just also sent off my new manuscript, to a really nice publisher out east who's interested in perhaps publishing it. So yeah, it's been an interesting time creative wise. So.
Nice. So if people are interested in seeing where your publications are, where can they find them?
If you go to just my website, which is Bryan, Bryan, Cherry, CHERRY.com. There's a poetry section there where you can buy them as well. But that also contains all my musical stuff as well. So
excellent. Now, if people want to stream your music, obviously it's probably on most streaming sites, correct?
Yep. Spotify, Apple Music.
Okay.
All of them.
What's that?
YouTube, all of them.
Okay. Do you have a Bandcamp?
I do.
Okay.
And just Bryan Cherry again. So
yeah. So people that are listening, don't just stream music. Go out and support artists. Go to Bandcamp and places like that where you can actually purchase the album and download them and help support the artist. Especially like Bandcamp, where they can, or most of the time the artists get almost all the revenue from the sales, and there are usually certain Fridays where Bandcamp gives all the money to the artists.
And I will say real quick, in October, Bandcamp was nice enough to review the Power record. So they've been really kind to us as well, like just helping us out. So I support them big time.
Yeah. It's a great place to still help support artists for sure. Now, besides your publications, your music, and your writings, do you have any other kind of merchandise, or you're not into that yet?
No, I have. Well, right now it's like CDs, and I'm waiting actually on the order right now for more than that, some T-shirts and stuff like that. So, but for now, it's just the CDs. Yeah.
Cool. Who did? I'm looking at your website right now, and I'm looking at the artwork for Trainwreck. It's really, really cool. Who was the artist for that?
His name, and I'm gonna get it incorrect. His name is Josh. So it's a funny story. I sat for a group of painters, and there were like 12 different painters, and they all did paintings of me in 3 hours. Beautiful paintings, and he let me use his painting and just put it. He's like, we can do whatever we want with it, basically. And it was like, yeah, it's an amazing. Even the power is also from that series as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say it kind of looks very similar.
Yep.
That's all the questions I have for you. I think we've touched on everything. Is there anything last things you want to say before I let you go?
No, you've been great. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for being on the show. It was much appreciated.
Yeah, take care.
If you're ready, you know I want it. If you need magic, watch me. Hocus pocus, it's true. For you and only you. If it's a race, call me, you say. I'll be your boat. We can make lightning rain, it's true. For you and only you. You say you want mountain. You crave that new sea. You say you want a little bit of everything. Well, so do I. Why don't we try to make it on through? I need you and only you. I need you and only Lay your head on my shoulder. Don't be afraid, because it's never over. It's true. For you and only you. 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 Don't say goodbye. Why don't we try to make it on through?
I hope you enjoyed listening to Bryan's songs and hearing about his poetry and the way he writes music. It's just so great to hear about these great musicians every week here on the Wisconsin Music Podcast. Interviewing them is such a treat, and I'm really glad that I have people out there that are interested in listening to it, just as I